So long to go live. There we go. We're live. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Run Your Mouth podcast. The world's coming to an end. Financial services are no longer available. Your cash probably won't be in the banks tomorrow. And I wanted to track down a real live American white male banker who's responsible for the problem. That's what I'm doing. I'm muckracking. I'm going to hold the people responsible. The wealthy individuals living out there in Mexico with with premier access to drugs that we can't take in the United States and bankrupting our entire fabric of our society by creating mortgage-backed securities and other financial scams. So, Johnny, it's a pleasure to have you on. And what do you have to say for yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I thought there was like a Jewish guy sitting next to me or something for this, but
No, that's not going to work on us anymore. We live in a new world where it's actually Indian lesbians that are starting to be responsible for these things.
yeah, well, at least it's a first. We get the first Indian lesbian. All the firsts seem to be doing really well in their roles.
I think
They're just
I think
knocking it
it's
out of the
most
park.
important. It's not how you do at your job. It's just that you were the first in your category to do it. So, even if you fuck up royally, at least you broke the barricade for people like you to go do that position, and then the next one might be good at it.
Yeah, set the bar low.
Yeah, and you just like your role was in breaking the race barrier. It's almost like if Jesus Christ, am I bad with names sometimes? Who was the first black baseball player?
Oh, shit.
We're both retarded. Let's just call it an episode. Let's just admit that we probably shouldn't be talking about financial stuff if we can't even come up with basic names.
Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson. All right.
He was at least good.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You used
saying.
to
Can
have
you
to be
imagine?
good to be the first one.
Yeah, now it's you can be the first just because you're the race, color, sexual orientation. You don't. It's amazing how when things go to shit, all of a sudden, well, I was a woke lesbian. No one cares anymore. They're like, "Can I have my money back?" Like that sounded like a good idea. It sounded like the pitch was never supposed to be, "Hey, listen, I'm terrible at the job, but at least I'll check these boxes for you." It was supposed to be everyone can do the jobs. And so we need to start giving other people a chance. But then when you start giving the other people a chance and they royally fuck up, it's not really making a good case for including the people into the club.
Yeah, no, only hurting their cause if your cause is to promote like hiring all these first-time minorities to all these positions. They're not doing themselves any favors.
Yeah, now it gets confusing because you're like, am I supposed to be trusting a Jew with my money or not? I'm not sure. Like,
I'm a big fan of stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. I'm hiring a Jew to handle my money. Probably if I need a lawyer, absolutely. If I'm hiring somebody to do math, like they're going to be Asian.
I get that. I love how most people shy away from racism in any capacity. But on this program, we're like, nope, those stereotypes are there for a reason. So,
yeah, well, good luck starting a stereotype that's false. Like go around and try to convince people that black dudes are terrible at basketball and have really small dicks.
There you go.
That'll go over real well.
There must be some Mark analytics that are backing these things up. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out there in the ether. All right. First, before we get into it, where are you living these days? You still out of Mexico? Or are we doing another Stay Alita? What's going on with that?
Yeah. Well, somebody told me I wasn't a real libertarian, so I've gone back to my roots. Okay. I've packed up everything that I own, and I'm living in my parents' basement as we speak.
Hell yeah, dude. And are you working on becoming more autistic also? Are you dropping a little bit of the charm, dressing worse, and not, engaging with women? Because that's really the pathway to becoming more of a libertarian.
Yeah. That's going to take some time, I think.
Do you have the whole basement to yourself? Because that seems like a good enough basement setup that, like, fuck it, just live there.
It's just me and my parents now. They have this whole house. I'm only here for like a few days, but
and the basement's just yours?
Well, my dad was down here earlier watching some TV, but yeah, I kicked him out.
And I'm not. How old are you now?
I'm 38.
So you're 38. You already did the outside of your parents' house, and you didn't end up getting married. So at this point, to go back and just chill there, it kind of just makes sense.
Yeah, they're happy to see me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was in Mexico until about 10 days ago or so. Kind of a crazy story. I guess, do we have time to get into it?
Yeah. What people have been listening to bank failure talk now for 4 days. We're 6 days behind the issue. So what does it matter? We don't even need to get into it.
Yeah, well, so my uncle had a condo down there that I was using. Did you get to see it when you were around, or
No, you didn't let me anywhere near any of
okay,
your stuff. You said
that's
you're
right.
Jewish, so I can't bring you in here. You brought me to a hotel that had rotten chicken, made me sick for the first of 3 days out there.
This is all
And no,
false.
that was a great time. I enjoyed. Where were we? What was it called again?
Sayulita, yeah, we were in Sayulita, Mexico.
They
The
didn't have
Sayulita
granola
super
bars,
spreader.
and I'm a curmudgeon Jew, so I was just a nervous wreck for the 2 days. But I had a great time.
Yeah, yeah. Next time I'll go to Costco and get you a bunch of granola bars.
Dude, that was the. I wish I had filmed it because I feel like of all the runs I did of my end of year stuff, that was probably the best showing of it.
You crushed it that night, man.
Yeah, that was
I was
fun, man.
dying. That was so fun. But yeah, so I was staying at my uncle's place down there, but my uncle and aunt like to use it. After Christmas, they stay there for like 3 or 4 months. So I was looking for another place to stay. And it's a really nice, this is a nice like a 3 building complex, like very high end with security and everything. And I knew these people that had one of the penthouse units. They've been renting it for 5 years and they weren't using it. So they let me stay up there. And I am fucking killing it at this point. Like I have like a multi-million-dollar penthouse unit right on the beach in PV for, high season. A lot of people coming for vacation. I'm having a blast just, doing the podcast, working for myself. I do some trading and stuff like that. And
Oh wait,
one day,
you're your own boss now?
yeah,
Because for a while you were running the scam of the fake mouse thing to move around on a
I
computer
was,
board.
yeah.
Which
Yeah,
did
they
you ever?
eventually figured out that I was in Mexico. It took them 2.5 years.
And then they fired you because they're like
Oh,
you're
I wanted to get fired to hopefully collect some unemployment. But no, they basically forced me to quit because they were going to make me go into the office every day.
and you just said, well then that's it, I quit.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I didn't even live here anymore. I mean, it had been 2.5 years. They
Right,
they thought it'd only been like a couple of months. That's kind of another long story, but yeah. So they dragged me into the office,
right.
and I had to have a meeting with my director and like the head of HR, who was like being a really fucking big bitch to me, just like
You
fucking
mean
lecturing me about all this. And then I
oh,
kind of
because
pretended,
like it was like a how dare you
yeah,
collect a check and not even be in America type thing.
right. Yeah. And, just using their equipment overseas, they were very concerned about that. It was all
Right.
just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, of
And then
course.
I basically, this is kind of funny though, because I was thinking about how I could try to get out of this. And I basically hinted at the fact that I was gay and transitioning when they asked me why I did it. And that completely changed the whole dynamic of the conversation. It was, dude, I wish I could have filmed that because it was
That's a
so
troll
goddamn
job.
funny.
That's so great. You're like, well, I was growing out my hair, and the healthcare for people exploring new lifestyles is a little cheaper down there, and I thought
And
being
it's
away from
very
my
gay. PV
family.
is like the gayest place in Mexico, man. It
Right.
was very gay friendly. So it's very friendly in my community, and I just didn't really feel comfortable talking about it. I haven't even told my friends or family yet. I just kind of said stuff like that, and they
Yeah,
got
you
it like
out HR'd
immediately.
HR'd.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
they're
it was
there with
beautiful.
stupid nonsense and bullshit. So the only way to really combat that is with your own stupid nonsense and
Yeah.
bullshit.
I just didn't want to get fucking. Yeah, I was like getting yelled at, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. What? Let's
Right.
see if this works. And then all
It's
of a
so
sudden, I got into that protected class.
nice. It's so funny as an adult when you actually find yourself in situations when you're being yelled at. You know what I mean? Like, I just find it funny at this point because it's few and far between. And usually when it happens to me, I just bite back. But anyways, I always just find it funny when you actually end up in adult situations where people are yelling at you.
Yeah, you feel like a fucking kid again, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You're
I'm not
like, yeah,
very. I
this is
don't
what
do
I'm
well
used
with
to.
it.
This is like, it's funny when you're back there because I'm like, right, this is what my life is supposed to be. Like, I'm used to getting set. Not that I was that bad of a kid, but like, I remember getting in trouble enough times that I'm used to being pulled down to the principal's office.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. I don't know, and I also still feel like a kid. Like, yeah, I'm
Right.
38, but I still feel like I'm in my 20s or something. I guess I'm immature. But yeah, so anyway, they found out, so I ended up quitting that job and I've just been working for myself for the last 3 4 months.
Hell yeah.
And
What kind of trading?
I'm trading E-mini S&P futures for the most part.
What does that even
I
mean? That's sophisticated. I don't
yeah.
even know what that means.
It's just like S&P 500 futures contracts.
Okay.
On like a minute, 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute chart kind of thing. I also do some stuff with currencies. So the job that I quit, I was basically managing a fixed income portfolio, which is kind of the stuff that we'll get into here in a minute. But yeah, so I was killing it up in this penthouse until about 2 Mondays ago, middle of the afternoon. 6 guys just fucking bust into the place, and they basically held me there for about 5 hours. And they changed the locks, and they stole this lady's car and her computer. And I thought I was a goner for a while, at least the first hour that they were there. They were kind of threatening me or whatever, and they knew everything about me. So somebody like told them, gave them
This
my
was like
name, and
cartel people,
I don't know. I think
right?
so. I'm
Yeah,
not
because I feel
sure,
like
which is kind of the
you
problem.
don't pull crime like that unless you got in with the cartel. I would think.
Yeah, you would think so because it was so fucking brazen. You know, they're
Right.
on camera everywhere, and they were just like, they just didn't give a shit. And so it was like they were taking the place back for the owner. And I guess the owner was like, we're in some dispute with the people I know that were renting it. But as far as they tell me, there was nothing, there was no
Right.
problem or anything. So I still don't even know why he did it. But yeah, like, so these fucking 6 dudes were like, they took my fucking picture and they basically threatened me if I were to cause any problems, they would come after me.
And so you decided, you know what? Maybe I don't like Mexico that much.
I still really like it, man. But yeah, I was supposed to leave in like a week anyway, and
Right.
so I didn't even tell these people that these guys busted in because they're like, dude, if you fucking tell her, we're gonna know, and we're gonna like. Then they knew where I lived because they knew somebody told them that my uncle had a place in the building. So I was like, all right, yeah, dude. Like, I don't even know these people that well. I don't want to be involved in this. I'm staying out of it. Like, this is between you guys.
So this lady doesn't know that she's had her car stolen.
She does now. So like a couple days went by, and then she checked. She had a Ring doorbell, which they said they
Did she call you up
disabled.
like, hey Johnny, was my car stolen and were you threatened recently? Because
Pretty much, like, so
I'm
you
looking
she
at the security footage and it looks like maybe you were brutally raped in the living room and they took my car. I'm wondering if maybe you just forgot to mention that.
Yeah, that's kind of how the conversation went, because I tried to play it off like, "Oh, I wasn't up there, like, I left," because
Right,
my uncle left, and so I could go back down to that other unit anytime
right,
I wanted to. I was just having so much fun up in the penthouse, I figured,
right.
"What the hell?" And, uh, and so, yeah, she's like, I wake up, like, Friday morning at, like, 6 a.m., I have 9 missed calls and all these, like, text messages, like, "We have an emergency," like, "Are you like, what's going on?" Because the building wouldn't tell, like, all the administration, nobody would talk to her. They just said, "We're under orders not to talk, like, ask John, he knows what happened." And I was like, "I don't wanna fucking like, I don't know what
Right.
happened either." Pretended not to be there, but yeah, she's like, "Well, I see them on the Ring," like, the Ring footage caught them, like, coming up and putting tape over the thing, and apparently they were still up in the unit. But she's like, "Yeah, security told me my car was gone and there's somebody else in the unit." And I was like, "Yeah, they like stormed in and fucking held me there." One dude had a knife. So yeah, I was like, I think it's once she found out, and so she's calling the owner, and I think the owner might have been one of the guys that was with him because there was like an older guy there.
Right.
But once they knew that she knew, and I was like, all right, I think I better get out of here. So
Got you.
so I caught the first
Now,
flight out that afternoon.
now you're back in your parents' basement.
For the time being, yeah, I'm supposed to go elsewhere in Mexico and house sit on the other side of Mexico in the Yucatan next month. I'm still on the fence about that. I'm still trying to figure out who we're dealing with here. So this lady's hired like lawyers and investigators, and she's suing everybody, and good luck with that. And she's like trying to get me to file fucking police reports. And I'm
You're
like,
like,
I'm
I'm
not
staying
being a
out of
witness.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, no,
I'm
no.
staying out of this. Just
Like,
shave the beard, shave the maybe actually go through with what you told your last company. You can kill two birds with one stones. You
God damn it, dude.
pretend like you're a
Yeah.
lady now, and then you can hit up your company and say that
Oh man,
they owe
these
you
fucking
they
lies.
threatened you out of your job. That way you can say is that you're owed severance because you didn't feel comfortable sticking around. They weren't embracing your new lifestyle decisions.
Oh man, dude, these lies always come around to fucking get you, man. That's like a karma thing. I remember before they actually found out I was in Mexico, I lied to like this other girl that I was seeing here that like or in Mexico that was like kind of crazy. and I told her I had to like stay in Chicago for work.
Oh, so you were pulling some real George Costanza shit. You're living in the
Yeah.
penthouse. You're telling your girlfriend in Mexico that you're actually in Chicago. You're telling your office that you're down in that you're
Yeah, the lies
while
are
you're in
piling
Mexico
up.
that you're actually in Chicago. That's pretty great.
And then both of those lies. So yeah, that like right after I said like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be back in Mexico for a while. That was back last year. Then they found out, and so that lie kind of fucking came back to get me. And then yeah, the transitioning thing, I might have to do that because the cartel could have a hit out on me. So
All right, so you mentioned that you're trading currencies now. Before we even get into these recent bank collapses, you got any outlook on what's going on with BRICS? Saudi Arabia is actually mending their ties with Iran. You got China's going over there. You got the possibility of oil contracts actually being sold in yuan or yen. I don't know what the fuck how it's pronounced, but do you actually see like a movement away from the dollar, or it's all just nonsense talk?
no, I think there is a concerted effort to move away from the dollar, and that is, with what's happening now with all the inflation, and the dollar losing all its value, it's going to make that move that much easier for everybody else to get off of this. Because one of the only reasons why we're able to get away with our reserve currency status is the fact that yeah, like we've kind of always done it this way. After we got off the gold standard, the dollar was supposed to be as good as gold. We'll just use the dollar, and we have this huge military to sort of freak people out. But if the dollar just completely collapses, it's going to be an obvious move for them to sort of move away from it.
So the big arguments away from anyone being able to move from away from the dollar, I would say it's two. It's one, it's king shit. And so even though it's shitty, it's king shit and nothing else comes close. That's argument one. Argument two is that there's just so much debt priced in dollars that there's like still just a massive amount of built-in demand for dollars that it's just not that easy to move away. So it's one, there's no good alternative option. There's nothing safer, and two, there's a lot of built-in demand. What do you think the move will be? Do you think there's a new gold-backed currency? Like, who do you think steps in with a better option that people actually move away from dollars?
Yeah, that is a good point because everybody's on the same bullshit fiat system.
Right.
I don't see. I mean, the right thing to do would be to move to some sort of gold-backed currency, in my opinion, which is why that's never going to happen. Like they're
Right.
never going to do the right thing. If you know, I think the ultimate game is this central bank digital currency. I think that's what they're really trying to angle for. So if if they do make a huge switch like that, my guess is that we'll be involved in it and we'll push for some sort of like global central bank kind of thing, digital currency. Um,
So
if
it'll
it,
be like an IMF, World Bank, basically digital currency, and all of our dollars will be redeemed at a haircut, swapped for this new digital currency, something like that.
yeah. If I had to guess, that's because we're still going to be at the table.
Right.
We are the U.S. So like they're not going to be able to completely just cut us out of anything. And I think that our government would be on board with that as well. They want just as much control of the citizenry as China does of their people and everything
So
like
you
that.
think that central bank digital currency would actually be a one world currency that would include a China and a Russia, or we would end up like in more of a like a bipolar world where you got like basically us, Europe, South America, Canada, and then you've got like maybe Turkey, Iran, India, China, Russia, like on an alternate
Yeah, I
currency.
don't think I don't think there would ever be that sort of unity
Okay.
throughout the world. I mean, we always need some boogeyman to
Right.
go after and blame blame problems on. So, yeah, it would be sort of fragmented.
All right, so a move to especially a new global currency, to me, the precursor to that would actually be a massive financial collapse in the current system to the point that they could not print, basically print our way out of it. And so they needed to create a new system to basically redo everything that they've done with the Fed. And maybe that would go for another 100 years before that the chickens came home to roost on that. So if you think that it's going in that direction, two-part question. One is, what do you think is the timetable? And it's probably a good lead-in to what's currently happening in the banking apparatus if you actually think that this is the start of that.
Yeah, timetable is tough. I do think that this incident that we're that sparked this whole thing with the Silicon Valley Bank and everything is the beginning of a pretty big financial collapse. In terms of them being able to take that and get us to a central bank digital currency, that's going to take some time, I think. I would even say it would be in this decade.
All right.
Yeah, so I think they have to do a tremendous amount of propaganda, I think, to get the old changing of the guard in line with that. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of very powerful, rich people that benefit from the current system. So yeah, it would have to be like a really, really big collapse that we're talking like Weimar Republic, Germany, sort of hyperinflation to get people on board with that. And I don't know if we're there yet anytime soon, but for sure they only have two choices at this point as far as the Federal Reserve is concerned. They can either save the dollar, or they can save this phony economy that they've been propping up for the last 20 plus years.
They seem to have figured out a new way to distort the signals so that they could kind of do both at the same time. And so before I explain that, let's get into what actually has collapsed at these banks. So let's start with, we've had two bank collapses this week. The first one was SVB, and then the other one is Silver Bank, right? Was that the name of the one in New York?
Silvergate was the
What's the one in New York that just collapsed today?
Yeah, no,
or they took it offline on Monday.
Yeah. No, Silvergate I think was the central the cryptocurrency one that collapsed the week before.
I don't know why I would have wrote that down. That wasn't the name of it. It was an easy Google search. I think someone in the notes, in the comments, just said Signature. Maybe Signature.
But yeah, it is Signature.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Silvergate Bank was the cryptocurrency thing that collapsed the week before.
Okay, so we'll get into Signature second, because that seems to me right away when the SVB Bank got taken out. I was on a phone call with a friend. I was like, I'm going to guess that they're going to just bail people out and say that it's a problem with regulation. This is because of crypto, and this is going to become their excuse to, start clamping down on crypto in general. And what they did to the Signature Bank, right? Someone's saying Robbie fell down a well. Is my sound not great? How do I sound to you? Does my sound...
You sound okay to me, yeah.
Oh, okay. Robbie's audio is fading out. Yeah, I think I do this literally every time I go on the road. I take all my production gear with me, and then I come back, and I have to and I keep saying I'm going to buy more equipment. All right, anyways, you say you were saying I sound good to you?
Yeah.
Check on Robbie. Mike, check,
yeah, loud
check,
and clear.
check. You're saying I sound good. Maybe these people in the chat, they're just fucking with me. That happens sometimes where, they like to pretend like I ain't got good. Oh, no. I did. I see what happened. I accidentally pressed the minus 20 dB thing, so the fans were accurate on this one. Johnny was trying to sabotage the episode saying that I looked good. I sounded good when I actually didn't sound good. All right, I'm going to have to hold this. Back to what I was trying to say. It seems like that New York bank, what was the New York bank again?
Signature
bank was in fact a clampdown in regards to crypto. We'll get to that second. Let's start with the problems at SVB. I'll let you go first. You're the financial expert. You work in the industry. In your estimation, what went wrong?
Well, obviously, it was all because of Donald Trump and deregulation. If there's anything we've seen in the financial industry, it's been just rampant deregulation over the last 25, 30 years.
Right.
It always drives me crazy when they come up with the one piece of deregulation that happened over the last decade that had nothing to do with the problem. But
then that's always the issue.
Yeah, like the 2008, it was like a partial repeal of Glass-Steagall that had
Right.
nothing to do with anything. It just like separated commercial banks from investment banks, and none of the players like AIG, Lehman, Bear Stearns, none of them like they were either just like a pure investment bank. Like it just didn't apply. So that's pretty much the standard talking points you'll get from the corporate press and the government and everything. But basically, what happened at SVB is they catered to the Silicon Valley, like all these big tech startups and these venture capitalist guys, and so they had these huge accounts. They had I forget the exact numbers, but it's like hundreds of billions of dollars in deposits, and like 95% of it was over the 250,000 FDIC limit. And basically their balance sheet was full of all of the things that ironically, the regulation from Dodd-Frank that we got that came from the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of that regulation forces these banks to hold a certain amount of government debt, treasury bonds, treasury bills, and things like that. And so, because the Federal Reserve had interest rates at zero for the last 12 years or whatever it's been, they loaded up on all this long term government debt, treasury bonds, and mortgage-backed securities, and they were getting like no yield on these things. And as the Fed starts raising interest rates, the value of all of those bonds plummets because there's basically an inverse relationship for I don't know if your listeners abla finance or anything like that, but as interest rates go up on a bond, the price goes down.
I
Uh,
can I can I can give a very simple explanation on that. Because
sure.
it's actually very simple. If you got a bond, let's just say you're holding it for 100 years. I mean, no one's buying a bond for 100 years, but let's just say you're buying a bond for 100 years. Coupon rate's 2%, so it's paying you. Let's say you put down $1,000. So what? You're getting $20 a year, $200 a year.
200.
I said I was going to make it simple, and then I fucked it up. Anyway, so you got 2%, right? You're getting 2%,
Oh,
so every year
2%. Okay.
making
Yeah.
you're making $200. Now, if interest rates, let's keep things simple. Let's get interest rates go from 2% to 4%. So now, anyone who's buying a bond today, they're going to make $400 a year, and you're only making $200 a year. So if that
Yeah.
guy's now holds his bond, so it's like every single year that you have a bond that's paying less interest rate than the current bond, that's
Right.
actually what the value of your bond just went down that amount.
Yeah.
So like if you look at it the other way, it's like if someone else has a bond that's going to pay them $200 more a year for the next 100 years, you could then do a financial equation to see what the compounding value, the time value money of that would be worth, and that's how much money you just lost by holding your bond.
Right. Yeah. So they basically these low interest rates. These banks lock in all this really low yielding paper. So like their interest rates were probably under 2% on a lot of these treasury bills and treasury bonds that they're holding, and rates are now at like 4 or 5%.
Now, it seems to me like it would be incredibly stupid to be buying long-term bonds in a low interest rate environment.
Yeah, well, see, it depends on your outlook. If you think that the Federal Reserve is never going to raise interest rates, we're going to have
Right.
really low interest rates for a long time, then you can get a slightly higher rate if you lock up your money for a longer period of time. So
Right.
I think they were kind of betting on the fact that
To
the
be
Fed
in
was
a
never going to raise rates.
2% interest rate environment and think that over the next 30 years it's not going up, you're basically betting on negative interest rates. You're betting that they are going to just go like Japan and just never allow interest rates to go up.
Yeah.
That's really the bet that
Well,
you're making.
yeah, or they, I guess maybe they weren't expecting rates to go up so fast. I mean, even though I don't think this is very fast, we're doing like 50 basis points, 75 basis points every, couple of months or whatever. But they got
But
kind
I
of
mean, if you
caught.
looked at a historical perspective, how many years has the United States prior to 2008 been at a 2% interest rate?
Oh,
Zero,
yeah,
probably.
almost never. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
5-6%. I think is historically kind of the average. So, but yeah, I don't think they had enough time to sort of unwind this balance sheet that was full of all this really low yielding bonds and mortgage backed securities. And so they had all these unrealized losses on their books because when mark the value of your portfolio, for lack of a better term, they're looking at, it's like, all right, well, this bond, was worth X number of dollars, and now that the price has gone down 20% because the rates have gone up, you only have this much value. And so they were very, very undercapitalized. All right. And so in order to fix that, they did a couple of things. They tried to sell a bunch of stock, and then they tried to sell all of these securities that they weren't going to hold to maturity, to try to basically swap them out for some of the higher interest rate securities that had better value to them. And that really freaked the market out. As soon as they found out that they needed to raise billions of dollars in capital to meet requirements, the market got kind of scared. And then you add to that, you're diluting their stock by issuing more shares. That really put a panic on there. So the stock starts falling. And if you go back to their whole customer base, which is all these tech startups and VC guys, that bubble burst like last year, right? So all of these companies, they're having trouble getting funding. I mean, they were on a gravy train with biscuit wheels for the last 15 years or so, like free, cheap money. They're starting all these fucking companies that just loot. They do nothing but burn hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And they've been having these huge cash burns, and now all of a sudden rates are getting steeper. The economy's kind of shaky. Their bubble's popping, so it's harder for them to raise cash, and so they're pulling out more and more money from these accounts. And the other thing that really low rates do is, people want to get a return on their deposits as well, and none of these banks are paying anybody anywhere near what the Fed funds rate is, even, because they can't afford it. They can't afford to pay anything close to 4 or 5% on these things. So you're probably not even getting like 1% on your deposits at whatever bank you're at. And so that forces people as well to pull money out and do something else with it, because you're getting crushed by inflation and you want to put that money to work for you. And so, yeah, they got people pulling money out of the bank. They're undercapitalized. It leads to this whole liquidity crisis, because they don't have enough cash on hand to actually make good on all of these depositors pulling money out. And then you have this interesting kind of concerted effort from Silicon Valley. And I wonder how much thought they really put into this, because if they were to make it seem like this was a systemic problem, you have a much better chance of getting a bailout. The first bank to go down always gets the bailout, and it's like the third, after they do it a couple times, oh, we're not going to keep doing this. So well,
this actually this seems a little bit the opposite, where sometimes you can be first to fail and then they fix the problem. So in this case, the way that all right, I got a little too much ADD, but I'll address this point now. I'm jumping thoughts in my head. The reason the latter people are actually better off now is that the Fed realized, oh, we have a problem across the entire financial sector, that people have assets that are now basically, not the proper term, but let's call them underwater, because interest rates have gone up. So this even happened with that pension fund in the UK last year, was they had this weird derivative product that was paying out based on the fact, I don't even remember the way the derivative product worked, but if interest rates went up, they had some ultra leverage thing that basically went belly up, so the government just bought them out on it. Same thing's going on here. All of these banks, they're holding on to your mortgages, they're holding on to bonds, and they all are going to have this problem that as the interest rate goes up, all of those assets that they have on their books are actually not worth as much. They got to mark them down, and then that means that there's a lot of collateral and liquidity coming out of the system. So the Fed, their fix on this one was basically, we'll lend you the money. I think the Fed has made it that you don't have to mark down those assets, and they'll actually lend you the money against it at the full cost.
At face value.
So you don't have to actually sell the asset. So the Fed has realized, oh, we actually have a problem across the entire financial sector. And this is the way that the liquidity problems happen. So you were talking about the collateral, the collateralized backed mortgages. So I guess that has the exact same issue, is that you're allowed to hold on to mortgages the same as you can like treasuries, in terms of that's treated the same as cash. If you're a bank and you're holding on to those items, that's considered the
Yeah,
same as
cash
cash on
equivalents. Right.
right on your balance sheet. But you got the same exact problem. If your primary business is that you're basically packaging together loans, but you've been packaging together the loans that you're making at 2 and 3% interest rates, and now all of a sudden the interest rates are at 7 or 8%, you're gonna have the exact same problem with. In my head, I'm curious, as with the bond, because now your coupon payments on the of all these mortgages are below the current market, so those are
Yeah.
actually now at a loss.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
maybe not a loss, but yeah, you're getting a much lower cash flow
right,
from holding those things than
right.
you could. Yeah, there's a
So it's at a
massive
loss,
opportunity.
yeah, versus making a new mortgage today. So the problem for the Fed, or where the systemic risk comes across the entire system, is that if every single bank all has to mark down these assets and all this collateral is coming out of the system, like with the way that our banking system works, which each deposit then cascades, because you only need like 10% in your bank and then you're able to loan the rest of it out. So as the value of what is in the bank comes down, you can't put as much money into the system. And all of a sudden, just all this fake money, all these asset evaluations that were based on a certain amount of money being in the system that doesn't actually exist in the system, it all starts coming down in value, right? So
Yeah.
that's where the Fed's got to step in and go, oh, we have to correct for this. And so they kind of figured out their solve here, which is we're going to distort the signal by letting banks not have to mark down the value of these assets.
Yeah, yeah, they don't have to mark them to market anymore. And yeah, they can get a loan from, it sounds like, essentially the Federal Reserve. I don't know exactly what the mechanism is going to be for this, but they're going to be able to get a loan from the government at face value, regardless of the value of the
So,
bond.
which is pretty not fair to SVB, because now every single other bank, since this one failed first, they're considered failed and they're out. Every other bank that would have been confronting this issue 3 or 6
Yeah,
months from now won't, now doesn't even need to. And so the only people who are really losing out here is all the SVB customers. They basically said, "Hey, listen, we're going to get your money back." They did that because they don't want other customers running to the bank and pulling deposits out. And then they told all the other banks, "Hey, listen, we understand that there's a structural issue here of that you guys have bought these bonds." And this is a nefarious bailout, in my opinion, because me as a private individual, I haven't been getting yield on my money because I don't really know where to put it. I don't want to buy low interest rate long-term stuff. And so that's incredibly not fair that you as a bank, you want yield, even though it's bad yield because you're going to lose money off of it when the interest rates go up. Then the Fed just steps in and goes, "Yeah, we got your back."
yeah, yeah. No, I mean the bank definitely made some really bad calls in terms of risk management. I mean, I know that the standard, theory is that, yeah, government bond is like as good as, AAA rated, is as good as anything, and you should own a ton of these things. But yeah, locking in really low yielding paper in this kind of environment, it was just a terrible idea. I don't know why anybody would want to lock up money for that amount of time. And yeah, no, that's a good point. They did, the bank itself, I got kind of screwed on this, but the people, these tech startups and the VC guys and the funds that fund those guys, they're getting the fucking bailout. All these computer geeks and everything that have been crushing it, for the last almost 2 decades or so. They're the ones that are getting this bailout at the expense of the taxpayer. So it's like, yeah, we're not bailing out Wall Street this time. We're bailing out these huge tech firms.
All right. So how bad, because you were saying at the start of this conversation, basically the Fed's got a choice. They can either save the dollar. Saving the dollar essentially entails that they're going to raise interest rates,
Yep.
or they can not crash. Was it not crash the economy? How was the way you
Yeah.
put it?
Yeah. They can save their phony economy for a little longer, or they can save the dollar. And I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen in light of this whole situation, which, again, we've been talking about. Any Austrian economist has been talking about exactly what was going to happen with these low interest rates.
Right.
It just, they've been able to keep this game going a lot longer than I think most people had anticipated. But Yeah. So
Well, I guess
essentially,
they have a new game now, which is it seems like they're not going to do the quantitative easing, they're not going to lower the interest rates, and they're not going to pump money into the system. Instead of doing any of those things directly, all the assets that would crash and burn, they'll figure out how to just distort the signal so that they can remain basically at their inflated values. It's like
yeah.
there's,
Well,
in other words, there should be a lot of money pouring out of the system. There should be a lot of things going underwater and failing, and then deflation. They're not going to allow for that. As the interest rates go up, like credit asset bubbles should burst because there isn't as much just free money to pump into things to continue to pump up the prices.
mhm.
The Fed can't allow for certain asset prices to come down because it destroys all the liquidity in the system, because as one thing gets marked down, then the thing that was built off of that has to come down. The house of cards just start
Yeah, there's a lot of
flowing.
derivatives off of that. Yeah.
Right. Let's explain that system a little bit because I kind of understand it. I don't think I articulate it that well, but let's just say bank creates a lot of mortgages. They package them all together. They give it a value based on the coupon payment that's supposed to be being made off those mortgages. So now off of that deposit of this coupon payment, they create derivative products, which would be, I don't know, you could explain the derivative products
Uh,
that they make against that.
Yeah, the big ones were like CMOs and CDOs, collateralized debt obligations, collateralized mortgage obligations.
Where now
It's
you're
basically,
basically you're placing bets off of whether or not people are going to actually make these payments. You're not even
yeah,
buying the payments, you're making a bet on whether or not that cash flow is going to continue going.
yeah. It's like a gamble on it, whether or not insurance is going to have to pay out,
Right.
essentially. Yeah,
Right. And so now to understand what ends up happening. So first is you've got the value of all of these mortgages packaged together, which allows the bank to lend out. For every dollar I put into a bank, what's the math? It's actually $5 is created or something.
I think it's 10, but
10.
don't quote me on
Okay,
that.
so let's go with 10. Let's just say it's 10. So for every dollar I put in, they now get 10. But then it's worse than that because for the dollar I put in, that $10 is actually, I mean, some of it's going into mortgages and the mortgages come back into the bank. Then I take all the money from the mortgage, I package that together, and not only do I create money by keeping that on my asset to lend out more money, you also have people are creating derivative products against that, which are worth 10
Yeah,
times the actual value. It's like having an option on a stock, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. There's a lot of
a lot
leverage.
of
Yeah,
there's a lot of money that is fictional money that people pretend as if like I got all this money, and so they go and buy things and they're propping up like prices, but the reality is, let's say all those mortgages fail and now I got to mark down the asset of these mortgages, which would happen in the last financial crisis, or in this case I have to mark down the asset because I have to actually sell it because I need the money. Well, then all that money, that fictional money that's on
it
paper,
just
starts
yeah,
fucking
it
washing
just
out,
evaporates. Yeah,
and that's
as
when
easy as it came into existence, it disappears.
all these prices start coming down. And so the Fed's new way is they can't allow for the signals. It's like a hostage situation that the banks would go out, the rich people would be taken out first, but those are all signals of the fact that there's failures in the system. So the last way they got rid of these signals was by just giving them money, right? They literally just gave them money. Now the new way seems to be, oh, you just don't have to mark it down. It's just a new way of cheating the
Yeah.
system
Well, the Fed did buy a lot of the toxic assets from a lot of the banks.
at full price.
Uh, I don't know if it was at full price, but it was certainly above market. Like they
Right.
paid a lot more than they would have been able to sell it to some other bank or something like that. So the Fed has a ton of these dog shit mortgage-backed securities on their books still from the 2008 thing.
So I do have
Uh,
a question for you. Why was this bank even engaging in buying the long-term government bonds when some of the bigger banks, it would appear to me, were just using the reverse repo market, which is, it seems like the Fed kind of understood. We went from the banks did not have enough money on hand, that the government was basically just lending them money through the repo market so that they could have enough to meet their capital requirements on just any given night, right? Then it went the other way where they pumped so much money into the system, the banks didn't know what to do with it. So they were just parking it at the Fed with the reverse repos and making, I don't even remember what the interest rate was, but it seemed to be like above what the Treasury was paying. So why were these suckers buying up long-term Treasury if they could have just been parking at the Fed, collecting the free money and not having this issue? You don't
I
know.
don't know the
Okay,
answer
fair
to
enough.
that. Like, yeah, it seems like they had other options, and they were chasing a yield. You know, I don't even know what kind of difference they were getting on this, but maybe, you know, maybe 50 basis points more on some of these deposits by getting the longer term treasury debt. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems like maybe they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. It's also just so stupid because you should be able to forecast risk your investments at better yields, your treasuries at these yields, how often people are actually taking out money, and then getting people to basically put it into CDs so that you can forecast how long you have their money for. Shouldn't be rocket science.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I think the cash burn in Silicon Valley was
Really
bigger, has
fucked
been
them.
bigger than most
Right.
people have anticipated. And then I think they were probably, maybe they were thinking that Powell was gonna cave on raising interest rates before he actually did. I think he'll cave now. I think we're gonna see a
Right.
big pivot coming, and they'll probably start you know, they'll pause for a little bit, and then they might even have to start cutting rates again. I don't know how much higher they can get before they expose the rest of these banks. And you know, all the banks are going to be in a similar kind of situation. They're all going to have some of this you know, this really low yielding debt on their books. So I think maybe they thought that they could outlast Jerome Powell, and they
All right.
lost
So
that bet too.
I have a different. Okay. Bank runs, to a certain extent, they don't really make sense to me. So I understand bank only, let's say, has 10% of what is the money that is supposedly at a bank. They probably only have 10% of it, and more often than not, no one's showing up asking for all their cash.
Right.
Now let's just say, as a theoretical, everyone actually did show up and say, "Hey, I want my cash." You got to run on the bank. They find out, oh, we don't actually have all that money, and then they got to close the doors. To me, though, that bank is now not, like, it's not bankrupt. It's just we can't pay you. It's like, I don't know, if I went to my friend who I lent money to and he doesn't have that money for me, I'm going to extend the terms of the loan. I'm not going to write the loan at zero. If after 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, I figure out, I run through all my capacity for collection and it doesn't happen, that's when I go, okay, I'm writing this off. This didn't happen. Right? So I would think if I show up my bank tomorrow and they go, hey, we can't get you your money, so I'm going to panic, but they're going to collect payments off their mortgages, off their this, off their that. It's not like that money doesn't exist anymore. I would think, if anything, they turn to you and you go, hey, listen, this is what we expect to be coming in this week. Who really needs their money now? We'll give you higher interest rates if you give me more time. Like, it's not really a defunct business.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, yeah, if everybody would just calm down and not try to pull their money out, they might have been able to get through this. But yeah, it's like a human nature thing. I guess people panic. Well, and
But
because a lot of, go
but
ahead.
I'm saying there's actually something stupid to going, okay, this is a dumb game where banks are essentially insolvent. But as long as nobody shows up and asks for their money and then formally goes, oh, the money's not here, then it gets to continue. But if everyone shows up and asks for their money and the money's not there, then we go, oh, this is now at an, like, in other words, we all
Yeah,
understand the bank doesn't actually have the money. But this is a dumb game because if everyone actually shows up and asks for it, and then we know for sure that they don't have the money, then we have to close the bank. The bank was in the same situation in either way. So it almost makes, it's almost dumb to me to just go, all right, bank is closed now because everyone asked for their money. No, all the money's here. You just can't have it right now. Here's a payout schedule.
well, I mean, they did take huge losses though, selling a lot of those securities to try to get capital. I mean, they were, their balance sheet, I think, was negative almost $1 billion at close of business on Thursday.
But that's
Because
negative $1 billion in a bank that's supposed to have $230 billion in it. So that means every single person that deposited money is what's 1/230. They're all losing a million. I mean, I'm not even doing the math, but I'm just saying it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like they've all lost 100% of their deposits. They probably lost 1%.
right, yeah. Well, and people, they did manage to pull out about 42 billion in
Right.
cash from this place over like a day and a half or something, which is pretty, you know, that's pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, in general, for like a bank could have could be like insolvent and never be able to get back all of the money to pay back its customers. if they lose enough money on these, buying bad securities or something like that.
Okay, stated a little bit differently. Let's say you go bank's insolvent, we're shutting down the bank, right? And now
Mhm.
everyone loses their money. Well, then people still have to pay their mortgages. So what ends up happening is like the vultures come in, they end up buying the mortgages for. It's like everyone gets screwed. Like everyone ends up making money off of the depositors. There would probably be a better system where you're like, bank's still open, but here's your payout schedule, and here's a return on your money if you're willing to give us more time to pay you back.
Yeah, that could be something. I mean, we kind of have that, except that it's the government stepping in
Right.
and be like, yeah, we're going to make you whole,
All right.
and they're going to take money from other people.
I had one other thought. I was thinking about that. Amongst all the things that banks have a monopoly on, this is one that we don't think about, and I thought was very interesting, is that banks kind of have the exclusive right at the moment. I know that there's Bitcoin, and this might even be an argument for Bitcoin, but they kind of have the exclusive right to digitalize your money. So, for example, if I'm like a private equity person, I want to get $250 million to somebody else, the cost of renting a secure airplane to try and transfer $250 million and insure that airplane, that's insane. And then that guy wouldn't want the cash. So I kind of have to go through the banking system because there's really no other way that I could just send you other than Bitcoin. I could convert it to Bitcoin and then Bitcoin's a perfect record, but you got the transaction risk of that the currency fluctuates, right?
Mhm.
But like I can go to a bank and go, I'm putting the $250 million in my account, and now I want you to go fund that to that guy's account. It's almost like a weird function of banks that were stuck with that they have the exclusive right to essentially because they don't have the cash on hand. Like even when I write a check, they have the exclusive ability to basically transfer money from one person to another person. It's almost weird that we allow them the ability to do that because it's not really a function that I need a bank for.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, I guess. Um,
It's like we're all stuck interfacing with a bank because how else do I transfer my money to you? It's just a number, right? It's literally just a number. This is where you start getting an argument either for using crypto or a central bank digital currency, and I almost think that there is a little bit of an argument when it comes to the financial sector that it's so socialized. It's like, why do we allow private people to even profit off of it? And then I guess you can make the argument that the argument is that at least there's some of the functions of capitalism based off the fact that it's not fully socialized. Like you look at the Federal Reserve. Like, why are random individuals able to profit off that? It might as well just be socialized and everything, the profits got returned to us. But then you realize once it gets fully socialized, it's even more corrupt and you're going to have more market failures than in this system where at least the a little bit that people are able to profit maybe I don't even know. Are we better with the half socialized system where random individuals can profit off of the banking sector just being fully socialized?
um, I don't think I think free markets are best when they're as pure as possible. When you just start doing half in, half out kind of
Right.
things, you create a lot of situations with moral hazard and just problems that are hard to foresee that that don't really have a good solution to them, and they can cause a lot more problems than if you were to just let the market kind of do its thing. Uh, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Federal Reserve, they do have to return a certain percentage of their like, they're only allowed to make so much money, and then they have to return the rest to the treasury. So,
Right.
that's why they fucking spend money like crazy. Like, if you ever go to the Federal Reserve building,
Oh,
it's like
because they
all
don't want
marble and
they don't
shit.
want money going to the treasury.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
let's say we get to keep, like, 200,000,000 this year, so anything, anything over that, it's just like they're throwing parties, they're buying dinners, they're redoing their fucking offices.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. Check out the Federal Reserve building. It's like the nicest building in DC. It's all like fucking marble
Oh,
and shit.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Um okay, I think that probably covers everything in regards to SVB. Did you have the story on the other bank, the one that just failed in New York, which oddly enough, the guy from Dodd-Frank was worked there.
Oh, which Barney
Frank.
Frank?
Yeah, Barney Frank is at that
God,
bank, and Barney Frank was like, "Yeah, it's because he's like our bank was fine. They just seized it from us to punish cryptos."
I have no idea because this just happened. Was it last night or I think it was over the
I think it
weekend?
happened on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really been following that. So I just saw that they had taken over that bank as well, and it seemed like kind of a weird preemptive precaution or something like that, where it's like, yeah, we're doing SVB, and while we're at it, we're going to take this one.
Right, which also just seems not fair. It's like you got to be Chase Bank. That's kind of the story here.
Well, and that's what's basically what all this is going to lead to. There were a bunch of like smaller runs on mid-sized banks today. Even Charles Schwab, they had to halt trading, I think, on that stock because it was getting hammered. But yeah, like these smaller banks are all gonna. It's already hard enough for them to stay in business with all of the Dodd-Frank regulations. It's far more expensive than it needs to be to operate and things like that. So what you got after the whole too big to fail 2008 2009 financial crisis was a bunch of bigger consolidated banks. We have what do we have, like 5 big banks now or something like that, and this is going to just exacerbate that problem. The more regulation you have, the higher the cost to for entry and things like that. All of these little banks are just they're going to go by the wayside, and J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, those are probably your best bets. Not to say that their balance sheet isn't as bad as SVB. It could be, but they're the ones that have the support of the Fed and the federal government, and they're the ones that eat all of these fucking shit sandwiches when they want to do all these bailouts. So the government kind of owes them a favor.
All right. So, last thing I was just thinking about is, to me, we're in a new place where bailouts are very unpopular. So they have to do everything they can to say that something is not a bailout.
Right, I know.
So, just to kind of recap the bailouts that we've seen since 2008. So, in 2008, they straight up they stepped in. Why don't we give the recap? Let's start because 2008 led to quantitative easing, but the first move wasn't even quantitative easing. They basically bought all the distressed debt, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think they call it was the TARP program, Troubled Asset Relief Program, where they were just buying all of this shit from all these banks
To
for
take it off the bank's balance sheets.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that was about $1 trillion. I think it was like 900 and some odd billion, I think, when all was said and done, which is like a rounding error for our government
Right.
now. It's
Okay.
crazy.
So first we have the bailouts. You got all these bad loans that were made, and they just take it off the balance sheets. Then from there we go into quantitative easing,
Hmm.
which is I know that quantitative easing put a lot of money into the market and that it was essentially the government buying bonds, but I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, that's exactly. So it was the Federal Reserve was buying, I think if I remember correctly, at least QE1, it was like 40 billion a month of treasury bonds and then 40 billion of mortgage-backed securities. So every month they were buying a certain amount. And that yeah, so they took the securities into the Federal Reserve balance sheet now, which I think is like, I don't know, $9 trillion or something crazy.
Right.
And then yeah, they flooded the market with all that cash. And which is
Okay.
why you saw like stocks just go on like the most incredible bull run in history.
Which is in part because there was very low interest rates and companies were actually borrowing money and buying back their own stocks, which was
That too.
propping up stock prices, propping up dividends. And then, of course, if you're the CEO of a company and you can boost the stock in the years you're there, you're making some money.
Yeah, you're getting a nice bonus. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they've completely perverted the market. There's all the incentives are wrong.
So let's say we had Fed money all the way up until, I don't know, when would you say QE4 stopped? Even though I think technically it was just QE1 and QE2, but then you had the
Yeah.
low interest rates and no, and wasn't the Fed still directly buying bonds? Um, I got to do my
Yeah.
homework.
Up and yeah, they were. I forget when they stopped. Might have been. I think they labeled it QE3. I don't think they ever called it QE4. There
Okay,
was like Operation Twist when they
right.
tried to swap out the kind of like what this bank was doing, SVB, where they swapped out the low interest debt for the higher interest debt. Um, and
And then
then
we had, I remember this was prior to COVID. They stepped into the repo markets. And from what I understand of them stepping into the repo markets, was essentially banks don't have enough capital on hand to even meet their 10% margin requirements. They would loan money to each other overnight.
yeah,
The interest rate on lending money to each other overnight got so high, the Fed was like, well, this distorts the signals of how much money is actually available in the market. Because obviously, if a bank lending money to another bank for one night is going to charge that bank 8%, think about what the actual price of money should be. Think about what
yeah,
the actual interest rate, if I'm going to lend you money, not just for like a bank is a pretty secure person to lend money to. So if I'm going to lend someone money for their house, if I'm lending money to a bank for one night at 8%, think about what I need to charge a guy for his house, right? Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
So, so
that was just after. If you remember, they tried to raise rates when Donald Trump was president,
right.
and
But
they could
I'm a
only get
low
up
interest
to
rate guy.
yeah, and he hated it, of course.
Yeah.
But they were only able to get a couple rate hikes in there before they had to completely
Come
abandon
back
that.
down. Okay. So that was another bailout, and not only did they do that, they also had that thing with the special purpose vehicles where they bailed out. They weren't allowed to buy junk bonds, and then they ended up buying a lot of junk bonds to basically bail out BlackRock. I don't remember the specifics on that bailout. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, no, not particularly. They really snuck that one in there.
Okay. All of that then leads to at the beginning of COVID, when they started sending all of us money, they sent a wild amount of money to the banks. And the reason why I think they sent everyone checks was basically they couldn't do another bank bailout and justify that to the American public. So they sent everyone checks.
They got to give you a little something too. Yeah.
I to this day have no understanding. I don't even remember what the dollar amounts were that were basically sent to the banks, and I don't know what that money went to. I feel like that was like a secret bailout that just snuck under the entire news's radar because there was so much conversation about COVID and, PPE loans and just that everyone was getting money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also the airline industries, they
Right.
all got bailouts. The cruise lines.
And you got to remember that all of the money getting put into the system also all ends up at the banks. So even like if the banks got zero bailout whatsoever, but you're handing free money to every
You're giving
individual and
somebody
every
1,200
company
bucks. Yeah, then it
in the
goes into their bank
country,
account.
that should help banks' balance sheets because they should have enough reserves on hand, especially if they're not going to start initiating new loans. Do you have any do you have any understanding? Because I'm going to have to do some homework on this of the last bailout, which is what I would say when they did all the PPE loans and they gave a ton of money to the banks. What happened there?
Um, not I. I just know that the number was huge. It was like they allocated something like $4 trillion for the COVID relief,
Right.
and they haven't spent all of it yet. So I know when they were having the debt ceiling debate like a month or so ago, the one of the Republicans talking point things was like, oh, let's use some of they still had like 500 billion left or something in COVID relief funds that they wanted to put towards the debt ceiling thing. But yeah, I don't remember how much the banks got or what they did with it other than pay themselves astronomical bonuses, buy back a lot of their stocks. Pretty much the same shit that they've been doing.
Right. And then they had this scheme, which I guess SVB wasn't working, but they got all this free money from the Fed that they then parked back at the Fed in the reverse repo and then just made the money off of that, which now brings us to the newest bailout, which is that banks stupidly or forcibly were engaging in low interest, buying long term denominated low interest debt in a low interest rate environment, and now they got to mark all that shit down. So the Fed's just like, you know what? We'll make it so you don't have to mark anything down.
Yeah, we'll give you face value for it, which is like, it's just so ridiculous, first of all. And then I don't know where they're going to get all the money to do this. I mean, the FDIC, the last numbers I saw was like they have 125 billion dollars, and they've pledged 25 billion of that to shore up this problem that they're having. That's nowhere near enough to shore up all these banks. So they're going to have to they're going to have to print this money, or they're going to, ironically, what's going to happen is they're going to have to sell bonds. The Treasury is going to have to sell more bonds to get money to give to the FDIC, to give to all these banks. And them selling these bonds is going to put downward pressure on all the bond prices that are on the books of all these banks. So it's going to put them, if they weren't insolvent according to their, their balance sheet, they're probably going to be, if they have to keep selling more and more bonds to fund all of these failed banks. It's just going to be this, this downward spiral that sort of feeds off of itself.
All right. So I'm going to take a couple comments. We got all sorts of comments here. People
Where do you see the comments? Do I have to click on the tab? Am I that stupid?
You can click on the comments tab. I'll start pulling them up on screen. But before we do...
Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I'm like, I never see comments on here.
I should keep them down because I get distracted with them. All right, let's plug sheathunderwear.com. Greatest underwear to ever grace the balls of man. Use promo code RYM. You get yourself 20% off. Johnny, have you ever tried yourself the sheaths?
It is. Yeah, I got a couple pairs this past Christmas. Yeah. And it is nice.
There you go.
It is very nice. Yeah.
Next Chicago trip, I'll bring you some sheaths.
All right.
Worn sheaths, though. I wear them in.
I don't think I'll be there.
Oh,
I don't know
really?
Where the hell I'll be.
Oh, because you're out of Milwaukee.
I'm in Milwaukee right now, but yeah, I'm as of the 20th, I'll be officially homeless.
There you go. So what are you gonna do? Just wander the earth?
Well, the plan was to go back to Mexico, but I don't know if I'm welcome. So yeah,
there you go.
Find something else to do. But I could go anywhere. Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. So sheathunderwear.com, been a loyal sponsor of the show. Underwear's terrific. Step up your underwear game. Summer months are coming. You don't want to be getting all sweaty. Johnny, tell them how good it is for the sweaty hot balls weather. You're in Mexico.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. Although it was winter time in Mexico, so it was still like 75, 80 degrees.
Oh, it's so
little chilly for me. 80. Yeah, a little nippy. But
yeah, well, now you're back in fucking Milwaukee, dude.
It is definitely a moisture wicking fabric. Very, very comfortable.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then I got my weekly Wednesday show at Cafe Bohemia, 8 p.m. Throwing up my friends, working on news jokes. I'm going to be at Steamboat at the end of this month on the 25th, doing Kyle Ruff's show. And then a bunch of tour dates with Dave Smith. You can find a comic Dave Smith. Johnny, what do you got to plug?
Just the podcast, Peddling Fiction. I talk about, politics, current events, and economics from a libertarian's point of view. And I also do a Substack, usually once or twice a week. I'll put out an article in there, and then some other rants. I'll do like a quick rant or something on whatever's bothering me that week.
What's the Substack? Also Peddling Fiction?
Yeah. I think it's just Peddling Fiction Substack or whatever.
Oh yeah,
know that.
I'll have to check that out. Check out Johnny in writing. Okay, this is from Lauren A. After a year of living my 10-year salary career, I was finally making almost double a month, and I had a consistent paycheck. Etsy hasn't said shit regarding this issue to their sellers. The Etsy sales are upwards towards 100K. Can you please ask what options people like us have if funds are withheld? So this lady's been selling dumb shit on Etsy and actually making money doing so. So God bless. That's capitalism at its finest. And now they're withholding her money. How did she get her money back?
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know much about Etsy. Wait, so do you have an account at Etsy with the money, or you have like a Stripe account or something that you're taking the payments through?
I don't know. That's all the information she gave us. Yeah. Moving on. The Cook Club. I just posted a pretty good meme about this on my Instagram. All right. Good to know. Anything goes. Meet me at the Mountain Goat Farm. You know the Mountain Goat Farm? Is that something out in your area?
I don't know, but I'm into it. Yeah. Bullets, beans, and bandages.
It's time. All right. That's not bad. Let's take one more, and then we can call it an episode. Going up. When will you get James Corbett on your show? I've heard that name before.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. Sounds familiar.
Make an introduction. I'll have him on. I'm not against James Corbett. Have you heard me on the podcast shitting on James Corbett? All right. Wait. Lauren A. It's an Etsy star seller account. We're not experts in Etsy. Do you think we know everything in the world of dumb trinkets that people sell online?
Yeah, I don't know, Lauren. That's tough if they're holding on to 100K.
Just go find them. Just go find them and ask for your money. Johnny can get you in touch with 5 Mexican men who are very threatening.
Yeah, that's true. Hopefully, I never see them again. But if they do, I'll send them. Yeah, I'll send them after your
Watch
100K.
watch you move into your next house day one. You get the key, open the door, and all five of them are sitting on the couch. They're like, Johnny, Johnny, didn't we tell
Yeah,
you not to say anything?
right. I didn't, man. I ain't saying nothing. But yeah, they do know my Chicago address because they took a picture of my ID.
That's scary.
Yeah, but I was talking to this one guy while I was sitting there for like 5 hours, and he was asking me if I had like guns and stuff. I was like, "Oh yeah." Like this would have been a much different. This would have gone over a lot differently if you
If
bust into
you're
my place
back
in
in,
Chicago.
yeah. So, where are you considering as your next home base? Just right out the basement. Your parents throwing you out?
Dude, I can't stand. I'm freezing, man. I don't like this weather.
Well, you're
I
already
am
coming up on
done.
summer. You might as well wait till like October. Just save all that rent money.
You don't know my parents, man. I was here for like 2 days
You're
last
already,
week.
oh,
That
and you're
was
already losing
plenty.
your mind.
Yeah, well, I brought him a like a TV, what my
Okay.
TV, which is like relatively new compared to the one that they had that was like 10 years old. I'm trying to teach my mom how to use like a smart TV. It was just, oh my God. Yeah, it's torture, man.
All right. We did it, my friend. Until next time, hopefully you'll be allowed back in the country of Mexico.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be alive.
Yeah. And if not, come out for one of the summer porch tour dates.
When
Do a
are
crossover
what's your
pod.
Chicago date again?
Um,
April something?
that's a great question. I think it's either April or May. It's coming up. I think it's April. I think it's the end of April. I'm back in Chicago. Hopefully I have some new jokes from last year. I don't remember what I was doing. And this time we're gonna be at Zany's.
Okay. Yeah, I know Zanies. I don't know if I'll be around for that, but if I am,
Yeah, hit me up. I think this time they might actually give me a hotel room so you can crash with me instead of me crashing by you.
yeah, because my couch is gone.
Yeah, you saved me on that one. That would have been a money loser if you hadn't hooked it up.
No problem, man. I had a great time.
Yeah. All right. Later, dude. Been a pleasure. We're gonna end the stream. Shout out.